Okay, I think we're going to call this meeting to order, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us. This is a discussion primarily meeting. We're going to talk a little bit about the presentations. We'll be anxious to hear people's comments. I know you all were forwarded by me the 66-page list of public comments, so you've had access to look at that. And it's up to you if you want to bring something from that to our attention. We're also going to hear from Eric Johnson a little bit about a few things related to PPP and some other legal aspects of this, and then we're going to decide what our next step should be and when our next meeting should be based on the fact that we're going to be waiting. Susan, you said till April 17th for something from Baker Tilly?
Yes, that was the deadline I put on there.
Okay, so we'll discuss that before we adjourn today, see if we want to meet again before then or not. Well, it kind of depends on how this conversation goes. So, I suppose we should do introductions. Okay, I'm Charlie Johnson. I'm the chair of the committee.
Shirley Hughes, CEO of Visit Fargo Moorhead.
Claire Hughes, Clubhouse Hotel and Suites.
Dave Pepcorn, Fargo City Commission.
Taylor Snelling, Mezzaluna.
Kent Kolstad, President, Livewire.
Denise Kolpak, City Commission.
Kate Paulstead, Southeast Education Cooperative.
Michelle Turnberg, Fargo City Commission.
Susan Thompson, City of Fargo Finance Director.
Tim Mahoney, Mayor of Fargo.
Emma McIntyre, formerly Folkways.
All right, thanks, everybody. So Eric and Shirley and I had a little pre-discussion the other day, and Shirley suggested that maybe it would be okay to take a little time for me to give people a brief history of the world. No, of the world as it relates to convention center, since at least one of the presenters brought up interactions I had had with them during the presentations, which was fine, but it dawned on me that others could have too. So I thought maybe we'd just take a little stroll down memory lane, because some of you, and the public, probably have forgotten or never even figured what was going on behind the scenes all the time. So I made a few notes, and in doing, I thought I could do this for like an hour and a half, but I'm going to try to condense it. So it kind of goes back to 2013. I started at Visit Fargo Moorhead in 2012, and it was either late 2012 or early 2013 when Rob Sobolik of the Fargo Dome invited me there to look at something. And it turned out it was blueprints. You guys don't remember this because it's almost ancient history now, but when NDSU went Division I and needed to do something about a basketball floor, they considered the possibility of building a new basketball wing onto the Fargo Dome. In the end, they decided to go with the renovations of the Shack, which we all saw came out great. So that was what Rob called me up to see. He said, look at this footprint. We had him redesign it, and we could actually put convention space in here. And I said, I think that'd be great. I haven't been on the job that long, but it's already clear to me that we don't have a decent convention space in this community. So, yeah, I'd support that, So the Fargo Dome Authority did some work on that. They got to the point where they were going to hire HVS to do a feasibility study on that, at which point, before they approved that feasibility study, downtown interests, largely from the Kilbourne Group, came to them and asked them to please include the feasibility of also alternatively building it at a hypothetical downtown location, because there was no location picked. There was no location seemed obvious, and this was right at the time, Mayor and Commissioners, I think you remember this, right at the time you guys were working on building this building. So that was kind of mostly what the city was thinking about at the time. So anyway, they commissioned HVS, they did the feasibility study, and it came back, if I remember correctly, and we'd have to go back and look at this, someone can correct me if they think I'm wrong, but the feasibility study said that a convention space, and I forget the square footage at the time, I think it was an additional 70 or 80,000 square feet all in, would have probably broken even, or the dome would have kept breaking even with that. Whereas if they'd put it downtown, they thought it might lose, because of the not shared staffing, they thought it might lose a couple $100,000 a year. So after that, mostly crickets for a while. It was kind of like a load of Jell-O got dumped into the whole process, because the debate went on about, well, downtown or Fargo Dome, and then I would have to say that my recollection is that city commission and city leaders were pretty much preoccupied at that point with the city hall project. I didn't stop talking to people. I went to the downtown interests and said, could you know, this is going to take forever because they're building city hall. And I remember you had a set of bids that came in and it got delayed by a year because the bids were too high. So anyway, this went on for a while. So we kind of wandered in the wilderness for a while. I actually wrote that down here. Until, I mean, we weren't giving up, but there just wasn't much traction for this anywhere. The political will was mostly, obviously, centered around building City Hall. I have a lovely anecdote I'd like to share, but I'm not going to. Okay, so about City Hall and the Convention Center. And no one stepped forward to do any kind of public-private partnership thing, which we were all kind of hoping for throughout this whole process. So, like 2017, Rob Sobolik and I started talking again, and we went to our boards, and we hired HVS again jointly. We shared the cost and said, let's do a study of the Dome and 3 other hypothetical locations, because the business community, if I remember correctly, was very interested in seeing other options. So we said, okay, we'll commission another study, feasibility of some locations. Again, we included a downtown location, but the only location they could identify at that time, because the Civic didn't seem to be available, was if they tore down the transit hub, which created its own set of problems because the federal government put $5 million into that, would have to have been paid back. But anyway, it was hypothetical, right? This was all hypothetical. So they used that, and then we also identified a site not far from the Shields Arena on that corner of 45th and 32nd, and then West Acres and the Fargo Dome. And we did that feasibility study. That came back, various results, you know, the pro forma was a little different for each one. And then we ended up having a joint meeting of the Chamber, as the biggest representative of businesses in the community, and the CVB board at the time, and we presented these 4 things to them, and we talked about how the only real viable option at that time was the Fargo Dome, because in spite of the study we did, no one stepped forward from a private aspect and said they wanted to participate in any of these other locations. So, and the response basically from them at that time, and I remember this pretty clearly, was we should do more studies. And I'm not afraid to admit that I was pretty much studied out by that time. I sort of felt like every feasibility study we'd done said, yes, we need this convention center somewhere. It will work somewhere. The question is, who wants to build it, and how are you going to pay for it, and where's it going to go? So it still remained coalesced around the Fargo Dome, but there was just this inertia behind it. No one would get behind it. For a while there, and then we got, then also in the mix of that, in the 2015, 2016 area, the commissioners will remember this, at least Commissioners Pepcorn and Mayor Mahoney will, there was more discussion about a performing arts center. And the Performing Arts Center always was largely targeted to be where the Civic Auditorium is now, if you remember correctly. So the city hired HVS to do a study of the Performing Arts Center. This was about 2015, I think. So all of this stuff kind of weaves together. And at Visit Fargo Moorhead, we supported all of this. Performing Arts Center is great. You put a Performing Arts Center downtown, skywalked to the hotels, you could probably cobble a conference together somewhere in there. Maybe not with big exhibit space, but you could do something. So that came back, and it said it would cost as much to tear down the Civic at the time and rebuild it as it would to remodel it. And then, I don't mean this in a snarky way, but more crickets for a while. Nothing really happened with that. There was no big will to do it or funding idea. All of the time along, we'd always talked about an additional 3-cent or 4-cent lodging tax. We centered on 3 cents. We thought that was the most palatable for everybody. Or using the as yet not in place possible 1% food and beverage tax that the City of Fargo still has in abeyance. You could also, state law would also let you put on a 1% car rental tax, which would not be as large, but it would be something. So that, those discussions went on, and then right before the pandemic, there was more interest in Performing Arts Center. So the city hired a company called Benefactor, and Michael Redlinger's here. He and I will remember that we spent countless meetings on the phone with them, and Benefactor is a consulting group that their purpose was to try to identify donors for a philanthropic portion, because everyone agreed that the Performing Arts Center should have at least half philanthropic and half public. And again, the idea maybe was use a food and beverage tax for that, and then have another half of philanthropic. But this led right into and continued during the pandemic, but then again, that kind of brought everything to a halt. So I'm leaving out some, lovely and very interesting details. But anyway, and during this whole time, I had been carrying around a piece of paper I put together. I went to Dave. I think I talked to Denise. I know I talked to the mayor. I talked to the other commissioners at the time. If you did this right, you could do both of these things. And renovate the dome, because that was under discussion too at the time, as far back as 2015, 16, 17, using both a 3% lodging tax and the food and beverage tax, and then I think at them we were also talking about dome reserves, which are more like 30 million at the time, I think. So everybody said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then again, you know what I heard? Say it with me. Crickets, thank you. Ultimately then, I think what led us to this point was the Fargo Dome's growing need for renovations, right? That kind of was what prompted the last effort. So there were a lot of talks in 2023, and in December of 23, we had the vote that was a combination vote of a quarter cent sales tax and the 3% lodging tax to renovate the dome and build the convention space there. And it needed, because of the sales tax component, it needed 60%, and I think it got 51 or 52% at the time. So that failed. So then, in January, as was described by Mark at the meeting last week, Mallory and I happened to be meeting with them about hotel issues, going over stuff because they were still relatively new to the hotel business. And Mark asked me, well, what's going to happen now to the convention center? Because this was like a month after the vote. And I said, well, I don't know. I hope it doesn't die. And I said, by the way, I did say this, what are you doing with this space out here? And so that led to them coming up with a plan pretty quickly, a sketch, more than a sketch, really. Architects don't do sketches. Anyway, so we said, okay, well, let's see if we can get some traction around that. Because they were the first ones really to come up with a public-private idea. So we took it to the city leaders, had a lot of meetings about it, and then ultimately, Joe, I don't know if Joe is on or Shannon is on right now, but they were kind enough to let me and that group come to the joint board meeting of the EDC and the chamber. So this would have been in, I think, early 24, maybe February, I don't know, somewhere in there. And then gave the presentation. There was quite a good discussion. It was a very lively discussion. And out of that, someone said, well, instead of handing it to one business, that doesn't seem fair, why don't you do an RFP? And that was, at that point, the mayor said, hey, maybe an RFP is not a bad idea. So that's how we got to this place. So that was the plan we worked on all that summer, really, and then got the two things on the ballot. So the Fargo Dome put a separate ballot measure on for the quarter cent sales tax, again, for renovations. We did the 3% lodging tax, this time only needing 50% because it wasn't paired with the sales tax, and took it to the voters in November of 24. And everybody knows what happened. The lodging tax passed with about 52% of the vote again, which made it yes. Unfortunately, the dome did not get 60%. So then we started the process that you have all been wonderful parts of. And so, almost anyone in the community could say that I talked to them at some point about, hey, you want to build a convention center? Because we've always been looking for that. And now we finally are in a position where we got 9 good proposals for public-private partnerships. Now we've got it down to 4 really good proposals. That's how we got here. Questions? Anybody? Questions? Did I leave anything out? Anyone who's old enough to remember?
Charlie, Joe Raso here. I
Hey,
am
Joe.
on just know in case there's a question directed to me, but thanks for that that background.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. I hope it helps, because people forget, I understand that, when I started looking at this stuff, I thought, I even found, Susan, from 2018, an amortization, a 30-year amortization of the lodging tax, which at that time was worth about $2.8 million a year, that was at 4%. I know we're not there anymore, but it would have raised $50 million.
Yeah, I think I had about 52 iterations of that.
Yes, we all have many versions of those, yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Questions?
Charlie, thank you for all that history, but I recall all through this is that you were like the cheerleader in front of something that just you always wanted. And the real light went on when you realized you didn't need a 60% vote, and we separated the Fargo Dome from this
Yeah.
convention center.
Absolutely.
And we're pleased that the public really wants a convention center.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
I think
Thank you.
David and I one time really wanted a performing arts center, and the disappointment of that particular project was it was 50 million to rebuild or it was 50 million to take down.
Mm-hmm.
And we had hoped there'd be a cost savings to rebuild for 40 or 30 million, and you could get by with it. But truly, for the committee members who have done hard work on this, people want a convention center. So now, Charlie, can you tell us which one did we choose?
Funny, no one's asked me that in the last week and a half, or 6 months, or a year.
Yeah.
A lot of questions about that. So let's talk about that. Susan, yes, ma'am.
Can I just add a little bit more color to the discussion, and then it ties to kind of the thing that I think we need to talk about today? So as Charlie mentioned, I was involved in most of that history, so that dates me too.
Susan was the finance director at the Fargo Dome through most of this.
Yes, so dagger to my heart every time you said they failed, so thank you. But, so just a little history on kind of the math. So my recollection of where the 3% hotel tax came from is it was part of the overview of the Fargo Dome. It was part of the big build. So, we had, originally it was just looking at the remodel, and the initial construction estimates for that were, 1 cent sales tax would cover that, maybe a little bit of the reserve. And then we said, well, as long as we're looking at that, we should look at what the cost of a convention center would cost. And at that time, we were looking at a 3-sided convention center to tie up to the Fargo Dome. It already had HVAC, it already had parking. So like the delta that was missing was the 3% hotel tax. So that was kind of let's do 1 cent for the Fargo Dome, 3 cents for the conference center. And that's, I think, kind of what stuck. But what I'm concerned with all 4 proposals is everyone has told us very candidly that 3% isn't going to build the hotel. Each one had a different way to address that, but I think that needs to be the question that we talk about today is how do we move forward with that? Because it just cannot become a burden on the city of Fargo to address the subsidies or not have adequate capital to take care of it down the road. So,
But the hotel wasn't part of the 3%.
I'm sorry.
That's the private.
I misspoke. It was the convention center.
Okay,
It was the
all right.
convention
Trying to make
center.
sure everybody understands
Yes.
that.
Yeah, the hotel is the private part of it. just
Correct.
to be
Yes, and that
clear.
was not even
That's
part of
not
the
our
Fargo Dome
responsibility
parts.
to fund that.
No, it was the convention center that was the 3%. I misspoke.
Eric, you're on, right?
I am, yes.
And you heard what Susan said? This probably is a good segue to jump into any comments you have at this point.
I sure can, yeah. First of all, yeah, I'll just piggyback one thing. The public-private partnership certainly includes the idea that we'd have a preferably attached hotel, and the proposals all include that for the most part, yes. But the public-private partnership also could mean that the private entity also sort of operates the convention center itself too. So not only, clearly they were going to operate the hotel part, but it's also possible that the private entity were to run the convention center. And I think that's the plan in essence, with probably every 3 of the 4, the Fargo Dome maybe being slightly different that way. But what I was talking about with Shirley and Charlie the other day that sort of prompted a little bit of the comments I want to provide to you. Is probably not telling you something you don't already know, but I just thought it might be helpful to hear a little bit about what phase 3 means. You know, you are obviously in the middle of phase 2 where you review and rank the proposals 1, 2, 3, 4. Phase 3, of course, is when you hand that ranking over to the city commission. They decide whether they kind of agree with that ranking. If they do, then negotiations, really the RFP process just says they start negotiations with the number 1 ranked entity to enter into a private public partnership. I thought I'd talk a little bit about what those negotiations entail to some extent. Again, none of this is going to be a big surprise, but I thought I'd try and lay it out in sort of a long sentence anyway. You know, the negotiations really start with a fairly involved conversation. It is going to be a partnership. It truly will be a partnership where you have 2 or more entities coming together to work together toward a common goal. And that involves just people starting to feel comfortable with the allocation of responsibilities and how decisions are going to be made and things like that. And so that really requires a fair amount of conversation. In terms of the tasks at hand that go into this public-private partnership agreement, you know, the land needs to be assembled, and we've identified the land pretty well, and there's not a lot of assembly of land necessarily, but you do need to probably convey title to the proper party so the construction can occur. You know, we have designers on board, so presumably those designers are going to be the successful designer with the successful proposal will be the one that does the design, but you got to design a convention center, design a connecting hotel. To what extent are those 2 going to be of the same style and so forth? I don't know. But those things need to be addressed. Construction of the project, how that works, will need to be addressed. Financing, you know, we're fully aware that the city is going to issue bonds, probably taxable appropriation bonds, and we'll work with a financial advisor to determine sort of the strategy as to how to sell those bonds and the timing of when those bonds start getting sold. Bearing in mind, of course, that until we have a project that's identified, we can't commence collection of the lodging tax. So that certainly that timing becomes sort of important to bear in mind. But the private developer, of course, is going to have financing, presumably with a local or regional bank to finance the construction of the hotel. And so those become sort of side parties, you might say. It's not that we didn't negotiate directly with the lenders, but each party is figuring out their own financing backup. We have to deal with some preconditions, possibly. You might need to create a tax increment financing district, or if it's the downtown project, we probably need to amend the existing tax increment financing district just a little bit. Not a big deal to do that, but it takes some time, and it's a separate process. As to the Fargo Dome location, we need to iron out the lease of the land from NDSU, which is really the state of North Dakota is the owner of the land, with the State Board of Higher Education being the decision maker that approves an amendment of the lease. And with the Urban Plains location, of course, you have the Park District owning some land, so we have to deal with that aspect of, you might say, a precondition and assembly of land. Then we get into the operations, of course. This partnership could last years, decades. And so you're trying to develop the elements of a partnership that hopefully has a lot of longevity to it. So, you know, we need to figure out who will be all the things you're talking about right now, quite obviously, but we need to talk about who's running the convention center itself, both the physical property, but also the operations and handling the events. The marketing, sales, and booking of events sounds to me like a very complicated process that'll need to be thought through and come to an agreement regarding it. How does the Visit Fargo Moorhead, the CVB, how do they fit into the partnership? It sounds like on everybody's proposal, there's certainly an integral part of it, and some maybe more than other proposals. So we'll need to sort that out, and they're almost another party possibly to the agreement. So we have issues such as the hotel. So, you know, hotels get sold, property gets sold. How do we address the possibility that that's the case? We think the convention center is going to be owned by the city of Fargo forever, so it's less of a concern there. But certainly we need to deal with the possibility that parties can change, and how do we keep this partnership going when there ends up being a new partner? So all of those decisions and the negotiations involved must be thought through and ultimately committed to a document that the city commission's comfortable approving. We probably will need some guarantees. Again, we're going to kind of jump off the cliff together. We need to know that the project will get completed, and we deal with that with public-private partnerships, the ones we've entered into from the diversion project to the 4 parking garage public-private partnerships that the city's had. We frequently have gotten some kind of guarantee and have had a vetting process to make sure that those guarantees are substantial enough to give the city assurance that when we start the project, we know that it'll be finished. And we really, from the city standpoint, until we kind of know who we're negotiating with, which is the proposal that'll end up being built, we'll need to figure out exactly who from the city, for example, will be making day-to-day decisions regarding the project, who will be in charge from the city standpoint. So again, not telling you anything you don't know, but thought I'd lay it out a little bit just to let you know about the process. It's not going to be something that happens in 2 weeks, so it'll be a little bit of a laborious task. But at the same time, it's just as exciting, I think, as the review process, frankly, because it's when I think the partnership can, the partners start gaining comfort with the relationship. And the nice thing about negotiating contracts like this, everybody wants a successful project. And so you're all working toward the same goal. And you're trying to anticipate problems that may occur and try and get them resolved as best you can in advance so that you have, less chance for hardship or divisiveness in the future. So that's a little bit of my sermon for the day. Hopefully that's helped. Again, I just thought I'd give a little bit of perspective as to what phase 3 might look like.
We're gonna recommend you for TEDx. So all of this is all of that. That's great. Thank you for all of that, Eric. And
Good.
I'm a simple human being here, so I want to make sure I am approaching this the right way. This is great information, and it shows that there's a lot of work to do after we do our own vetting and pick a project, correct? So, but we're not going to do this. We're going to get the information we can from the city consultants, or get the information we can from HVS, and then the committee is going to make a recommendation, and then the city commission will decide how to move forward with it. So I'm correct in assuming that once we get our information we're paying for back, there's no reason for us to wait. We should make a recommendation so we could get on with this, right, Eric?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as this committee is concerned, I think we get that info and then we get back together and complete that process so we can move this forward as quickly as we can. I mean, we had different groundbreaking and opening dates for each of the 4 projects. Everybody knows that will be affected entirely by how these negotiations go once the project is picked, right?
Do you anticipate a discussion following receiving the information from HVS? I know previously we got the proposals and then we reviewed them, and that was kind of are you thinking that we'll get to talk about it in person as well?
Well, I would like to talk about it in person. We can talk about it today. Wouldn't mind a little bit of that. But ultimately, yes, I don't think we should do our scoring and ranking until we get this information back, because there may be factors that we would want to consider. But that doesn't mean we can't have some discussion. I'm sure all of you, like me, have gotten calls, I'll be right with you, have gotten calls or questions from people, come on, you must have a favorite. And I think, it would be disingenuous for any of us to suggest that after more than a year of working on this and looking at all these proposals, that we don't, see pros and cons in each of them, but are probably starting to head one direction or another, but we still need this information to come in to help us with that. So it'd be goofy to say that nobody's really started to formulate an opinion. If you haven't, then we're not going to get anywhere. So Shirley.
Yeah, I just think too, can you hear me? I think today is a good opportunity to talk about, I feel like I know I have more questions. An hour didn't feel like enough with each of them because it was so much information that, do we, Charlie, if people submit questions that we have, if not today, maybe this next week, that we could even maybe then outside of the information Susan's gathering and HVS, that then we go back to each of them with maybe written questions that they can answer? Because I think there's, you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked that question, right, when they were up there, but you forget. So I don't know if anybody's in favor of that while we're waiting, again, for some of this other information that I do think is crucial with HVS. I don't know when, I haven't talked to them yet to find out when they're going to give us their thoughts and scoring, but I think to me that there might be other things that we missed that we want to ask more of.
Yeah, I think that's great. In fact, if anybody has a question, if you wanted to send it, just to make it a clearinghouse, you could send it to me and I can forward it to whichever, maybe you want to ask a question to all of them, or you want to ask a specific question for individual presentations. I would be happy to forward that, get the answer, and bring it back for everyone.
Can I ask you for a favor? If we do that, can we all get
favors? I don't know. Okay, sure.
But just so we could all see.
Oh, yeah, everyone would see it. Yeah,
That'd be
absolutely.
great.
Yeah,
I think-
this is not, no secret questions.
Yeah, last time.
There are
I
no
think
secrets.
Mallory made that collaborative document, so we could all go in and see what other people had typed up. Something like that could be positive again in this second round.
Okay, I don't know how to make a collaborative.
I can make
Okay.
it collaborative. I'm on it.
Can I just add one more thing? We
Yeah.
were talking before the meeting started about the comments, the public comments, and so I hope people can get a chance to see those, because it's
We've seen
66
them.
pages, and so, but it was so clear that there was a consensus, so that everyone agreed, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
it was,
that's funny.
we were just talking, it's unbelievable, and so it's, just real quick, all four are excellent.
Yes.
And they all have pluses and minuses, but the funny thing was, to the comments, on each one, it was either the worst or the best, and the comments were right next to each other, so.
Absolutely not. This is the best place, right next to each other, about the same place. But that's the way it goes, everyone, you could probably get that around the committee if you pushed and shoved to get to it. But it's good to see what people think, because it's a continuation of our discussion, just written down in 66 pages. Did you have a question, Claire, or comment?
Comment more than anything. I think, well, the first round, I think between how we scored it and then having the opportunity for questions kind of was backwards for me. So I think if we had the opportunity to look at the scoring rubric and then submit the questions at the same time, because I remember thinking, what were they doing for loading docks again? Oh, yeah, or the parking situation was this. And so, I mean, we have a lot of the information on all of these. Like, it's in there, but I think it would be a good thing to review also before scoring.
I suppose we could we could keep asking them questions until we get the material back from Baker Tilly and HVS. Someone will create a shared document.
Well, that might prompt more questions too, we'll see,
What's that?
Once we get the
Oh,
financials
yeah,
back, that might prompt more questions, and you might wish to extend the timeline, you'll have to just see
But there
how
are
that
lots of
goes.
questions that might not have to do with that, too. So yes, we'll have more questions after that, for sure. Okay, other thoughts?
Charlie?
Yes.
This is Thomas here.
Hey, Tom.
And first of all, I want to say thanks for that history. It's been amazing to be involved this long and to be a part of that. And you remembered a lot more than I do about it. It was really great. But just to give you any kind of comfort, in a lot of cities we worked in, this kind of long incubation period for development of a convention center is not unusual. It takes a long time to build consensus. And the difficult point is always when it comes to finding the resources to do it. And looks like you have. And so I think, achieved a lot of success. A couple things I wanted to say in reaction to Eric's comments. First was that I think you also have to think a little bit about what, during that negotiation process, what resources the city is going to have to devote to this. I mean, money resources there. You're going to need to, and in the development process itself, you're going to need owner's representation to make sure that the agreements you reach are actually being fulfilled and what you want to be built is being built. I think most of the cost of the pre-development work would fall onto the developers because they're doing the design, and that's great. So I think that's one thing to think about. There will be ongoing, a lot of work on the part of the city and its consultants to help you move the project forward. What I don't know if you want to do this today, here and now, but I would sure like to have a discussion about what kind of information you want us to generate, get into some of the more details of what you feel this committee needs in terms of information from us, and I don't know if you're prepared to talk about that today, or if you want to do that with a smaller group later on, but getting some real clear definition around that would be really helpful for us to understand how we help you move forward.
Well, we will want you to score it just like you did using the same matrix. We're using a different matrix, a simpler matrix to score this time when we get around to it. So certainly you should go by that. I think anything that falls into your expertise, we'd be happy for information on too, even if it overlaps a little bit what we get from Baker Tilly. You guys have some financial expertise, but mostly we want you to tell us what you think of these proposals and what stands out about each one, yay or nay. And I mean that both negative and positive.
Yeah, I mean, one major concern that was raised today is, what is the ongoing public commitment to this project in terms of, are you going to have to provide ongoing subsidies, or are you going to expect this to break even? And
right.
In looking at this round of proposals, it's more clear. I think the demand profile for each of these locations is different. There's some have more emphasis on sports, some have more hotel proximity, and that means you could get different kinds of events. There's a little bit different mix of spaces in them. So I think, I think it might be helpful, if you want this, for us to do an overview or a test of their pro forma, operating pro formas.
Yep.
And to see if we think there's anything that they may be assuming that we don't think is a good assumption, or if we would come up with really different operating results than they are proposing.
Yeah, that would be fair.
One thing, in addition to scoring, I think those are basically the main two tasks we could take on. In terms of what we got this time around, I think in terms of the physical plan and site, the only one that changed a lot was the Civic Center.
Yep.
And the new information that we have that might change rankings is the financial information that they provided. So that's probably more the focus of this step in scoring, where differences might occur. So.
Yeah. And I don't think we'd mind if you gave us, your opinion of the management proposals too.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Susan, you had something first, then we'll come back to Dave.
Actually, no, I was just going to suggest that to Tom, so thank you.
Okay.
My expectation would be that HVS would look at the operating plan, including the operating financials and the management structure.
Yeah.
As I was looking at them, and I'm familiar with venue-type financials, it was very hard to know apples to apples, or is it apples to apples, and we need to do that somehow. And is if there's no kitchen and 20% catering, how does that compare to others? Just things like that at an operational level. And that's the message I gave to Baker Tilly for the financials, is that I said I thought HVS was going to be looking more at the operating, and Baker Tilly would look more at the underlying private partner financial structure and kind of just overall observations.
Yeah, good. So yes, let's do that. Commissioner?
So that's kind of what I was, but to me, it would be nice to have like a chart with all four of them, so we are comparing like financially each thing. Like if you could have them across and say, this is what their rate is for all four of them. So it's simple for us to understand, because some of the financials are easy for Susan to understand and not so much for me. But does that make sense to just say, okay, let's say liquor sales, does this go to the city of Fargo? What is the percentage for all four of them, just to show us, so we can show, so it's fairly simple to see how they compare. Because to me, there were some numbers that were different for the different groups, and does that make sense?
Well, and different management styles produce different comparisons too, so that's why, Tom, if you can give us a chart, a comparison chart? All right.
Because some had
Well,
management fees and some
we
did
could-
not. Yeah.
Yeah, we could try to model each one of these, the demand and their financials with the same categories of events, same categories of revenues and expenses. Then we can line them up. I don't know if liquor sales would be maybe too detailed, but the overall catering concessions would be separate lines. We want to look at rental revenue. We want to look at F&B revenue, and then and assess the thing. But the difference, I think, the differences would really stem primarily from differences in the makeup of demand for each of these facilities. So something that's doing largely sports is going to be something very different than doing conventions and conferences. I also think that one perspective we should have on the financial operations is what how well does each one advance your goals as a city, right? Because there's various goals you have. This one, you want financial sustainability as a goal, but you also want economic impact as a goal. I'm not suggesting that we do economic impact analysis of each, but I think different sites may have different effects on the city, and different urban impacts on the city. So those should also be, I think, part of the thinking that when you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at not just, is this a better bottom line than the other one, or is this a bottom line that is that really provides the kind of return on investment that we want.
So you think you could provide us with at least an overview of that?
Yeah, I think so. I think we could put it in context like that and try to discuss, I think some of those criteria are kind of embedded in the ratings, but I think maybe being more explicit about what the city's goals are in doing this project, and make sure that those are met.
Commissioner Kolpak?
Yeah, Tom, thank you. That was actually going to be my first point. Impact that includes tax base ramifications for all political subs, depending on location and buildings and new. And but also, my other question, I'm not sure who would do this work, but the due diligence on any associated vendors that were brought forward. Shirley and I talked about this before the meeting today. And I don't know who was going to own that, so we're doing that consistently.
I'm sorry, on the management process?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think I would like HVS to weigh in on that for sure. And of course, it's going to be a topic of discussion, I think. I also believe that whichever project we might recommend, number one or number two, I sort of feel like that still could be negotiated differently than whatever might be proposed right now. So I don't know, Tom, if you had any opinion on that, but or Eric probably would too. I think that could be part of the negotiations. But yes, we would like to see, again, from you, some discussion of the management proposals that they make.
Yeah, that's right. But I thought maybe you meant, did you mean a broader thing of what about their construction management, the quality of that company, or the
I think we're thinking more about once it's up and running, the management of the facility. So because, some of them use outside or hire a third party, some of them have their own, are planning to do it themselves. Actually, I guess 3 of them are planning to do it themselves. We'd like to see your review of what you feel about that.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're getting at, Commissioner? Yeah.
Because we received letters of recommendation based on their building. So that has been vetted in some regard in their proposals. Most of them included letters regarding their financial and performance in the construction side of it. So I think something on the softer side, soft skills side.
I never say I'm too old to be surprised, but I'd be kind of surprised if there were any weaknesses in the teams that they put together for this. I don't think that's going to be I'd be shocked if that was a problem, but I think it's more a question of operational finances and then management structure that I'd like to see.
I'm just curious, we've seen all 4 proposals. Surely sometimes reacted to some of the vendors that would get involved. I mean, it's kind of like when you give your Uber driver 5 stars or whatever, you seem to be a little bit on some of the event coordinators, you have some concerns. Second thing is that, you know, if the Fargo Dome moves the hotel to the Fargo Dome to the convention center, you lose the expense of a $4 million skywalk. I mean, is the committee, are we allowed at all to say, hey, why don't you save some money? Or can we ask them, can they save some money? Because what you're saying now, I mean, if the commission looked at it right now, right, we'd say, does it make money? We don't want to be tagged with $500,000 or $2 million we have to put into it yearly. So we're very concerned about that. And you could say, well, Tim, you're going to get economic development of $60 million, but it'll cost you $1 million a year for 5 years. I think the commission would want to know that. They'd want to, I mean, you could see investing maybe if you're going to get a payback of growth in North Fargo or growth in downtown or growth somewhere, right? Rohala area has a huge area that they want to develop. But I think the commissioners have learned over time, you can talk a good talk, but eventually somebody's got to come up with the money. Somebody's got to kind of put that money out there. So I don't mind an analysis of some of the economic impact, but give me real analysis. I don't want fluff of, you know, surely when you tell about all the economic impact of tourists in our community, that's overwhelming. I mean, it's millions and millions of dollars. And when you gave your annual report, I don't think most people understand how much tourism brings to our community. And it's like when you do your weekly reports of all these people stayed, here's what would happen. And what I love when you do those is all the things that are going on in our community. And it's not just a convention center, it's just all sorts of crazy things that go on. That crazy wrestling tournament just occupies most of our hotels, but boy, you'd rather not give that up forever. I mean, you'd like to maintain that forever.
Exactly.
But when we're getting into the nuances, I think the commissioners are going to really want to know, end down, what do we got to put into it? Are they ever going to come to the commission and ask for $1 million? Are they going to come for $500,000? And Dave, you're always concerned, you know, about our budget and where we go, but if you suddenly saddle us with the transit system, saddle us with $3 million, and it's just like, hey, that's not easy money to come up with. So I love the idea that we get both parts, but I think the commissioners are going to be very much concerned as does it work. Then surely the second part is, you know, I got to believe there are some people, you know, that can bring conventions to our community, and I don't like the fluff, but it's your assessment that, yep, this person can deliver on promises made, because if we do the convention center and we don't have people, it doesn't matter, right? We can have a beautiful center, but if whoever the promoter is,
Yep.
it's kind of like a circus. Like you go to the circus if the elephants are doing great things, but sometimes you wouldn't go if the elephants weren't there. But your thoughts?
Because it smells.
Elephants?
Listen, I think one of the, I too want HVS to look at the third-party operations of it. There are a lot of third parties out there that do this, and I think I want their opinion because they've probably come across all of them that have been in the industry. So I want their opinion as well. We can make all kinds of phone calls from other communities that have these same vendors and do the same things. Obviously, if it's self-managed, if it's, there's different scenarios here. So again, I would appreciate that. And also, the challenge with all of this is that management fees versus non-management fees and how that works. Some of them talked about, we know we might have to give a little bit on our fee to actually get the people in the building, which I truly appreciated. Being able to have some flexibility. So I think all of that, again, I'd love for Tom to give us some feedback. As we have said from the beginning at Visit Fargo Moorhead, we will support in sales and marketing. That is the thing that we will lay into heavily. And my board is on board with that. Right, Claire? Yep, she's our vice chair. The board is agreeing with that. We are looking, you know, we're hiring team right now. And so a lot of that, we will be working with that facility operator, whoever it is, to do that magic. I will tell you, the word is on the street. We have gotten people going, is it open yet? We have a bid for 28 and 29. We can't respond to those because we don't know what it's going to look like. So there is an appetite there. We are already ready, and again, this is just so you guys know where we're at. We are ready to put a, you know, PR campaign out to even the North Dakota associations going, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, get ready, it's coming. So we're ready to go quickly as soon as we know. Again, each facility is so different that I don't know what I can sell. But we are going to remind people that it's coming and it's going to happen fast. And so, because the minute we pick the partner, assuming negotiations might take a while, as Eric said, but if I know who the partner is and I know the location, I can at least start to sell, in a different way. So there is pent-up excitement in the industry about this, and that's just in our region, and that doesn't even address the larger, again, I know that we can go nationally as well. I talked to Grand Forks last week, and we were talking about a variety of different things when it comes to the Alaris Center. And she's like, we have a lot of national things that come here. I know that you will get them as well. She explained how important the right operator and the right operating team is. Highly, highly important. So she's been really great, as is Bismarck, to pick up and answer my questions, even though we are very quickly going to be even bigger competitors. But what's good for the region is good for them as well. So is that an answer for you, Mayor? Maybe more than you wanted.
I'd like to tackle the other part of that question, though, is no one wants this to result in coming back to the city and say, ooh, we need $1 million, we don't know where to find it. That's never been the plan. We sold it that way, it's never the plan. So we need to make sure that this works that way, and that any shortfall that happens, and there probably will be shortfalls in the first few years at least, is covered in a way that doesn't require going back to anything other than the lodging tax.
And so I
I'm
think,
really excited because I think Shirley offered to cover any losses, so I'm excited, so.
My board would probably say no. Here's the thing, the higher the occupancy rate, the more money we have to work with. So this is about driving occupancy rate. And just to remind everybody too, as a convention hotel, this is not just about the convention hotel. We are going to get bids that fill up multiple hotels. Hopefully we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 citywides a year. And so this will fill up every hotel in town, hopefully, knock wood. That's what, just like wrestling does every year, right? Wrestling fills up all of our hotels is one example. So we are working on more and more things like that, but that's what this will do, is the ripple effect. And so that hotel is important because meeting planners require it. They need a place to be close to the convention center. They need to be able to have their board meetings. They need to be able to have their executive meeting. They need a place as a headquarter hotel. You've all have gone to one of these. You have a headquarter hotel. And then everything spans out from there, whether it's 2 more or 6 more or 10 more hotels. So that's what I want everybody to remember as well. It's not just about this hotel, it's about all the others that will fill up throughout the community.
Yeah, even if it doesn't do a citywide fill-up, it creates what hoteliers call compression. So the new people coming for the convention stay in the hotels as close to it as they can get, but then there's other business that comes too, and that goes to the other hotels. The whole idea is to lift all of the hotel boats. Susan?
I think we didn't necessarily address the mayor's, I think what it was going to be his question, and it maybe ties in with, the additional questions we're going to ask the proposers, but, between now and when the commission needs to make a decision, you really need to focus on what is that funding gap, and are the results or the solutions that were provided realistic? Like, are you as a commission going to let downtown tap into the riverfront TIF? Is it okay for people to refinagle their concepts to get the cost down? Like, what are you directing to happen between now and then? So, because we have to narrow that gap.
Yeah, we'll know about it, we'll know about as much about it as we can from what we get from them. The final answer won't come until we've picked a project and start negotiating with the one that we think has the best chance, that the city commission decides, hopefully based on our recommendation, has the best chance of succeeding. So we can't know this stuff yet, right? But we know these are things that we need to have very high on the list. Obviously, the profit and loss, the pro forma operating, that's crucial. Mayor?
Well, I think on that question Susan raising, we as commissioners need to know, does the TIF support $5 million? Does the area, the downtown, support a $2 million? So the tapping out $7 million from TIF, I think we need Jim Gilmore to tell us, yes, that's affordable or doable. But I think all the commissioners kind of know there was some competing. Jim gave us a list of 8 things he wanted to do with the TIF money. Mid-America Steel we want to revitalize and do some things with. So I think we as commissioners, it's owed to us that to Susan's point, are we going to, is it realistic that the commissions are going to do that? Because that's like the performer is very dependent on that $5 million, right, Charlie? I mean, when they presented it, they accepted, we're a little short, but we're going to grab $5 million from the TIF. Well, I think commissioners would want to know, is that reasonable? Is that money in, is it in there? And I know Jim showed me the projections, so I know where the projections are. But I think the commissioners would have to see that. And if you do this, what you don't get. Because if we do this, then we're going to use it for other things. We won't get that. But I think for Susan, that's if we do the convention center downtown, here's the effects on our TIF money that we had that was really separate from this. Because Charlie, I think when you started this, it was the lodging tax that was the 40 million, 40 to 45. That's it, guys. That's what you get. But I think as a committee, you need to know that. I just warned the committee, the commissioners will be looking a little bit more at that TIF request, just more jaundiced, because we have to protect that if we need it for other things, right? Correct? Yeah.
Right, and then the other thing is, what is the political appetite to create a new TIF district for, another one that offered that as their solution. One solution was to not build a kitchen. How are all those pieces fitting into the overall puzzle?
Well, I think you're right. I think David would agree with this too, is if us got to do TIF through is that we have to, school board that's kind of goofy, and county is always complaining. So a TIF now, as far as the committee needs to know, it's not as slam dunk as it used to be. We would see a TIF, and it's really to take out blight and build stuff. And it made perfectly sense to our Economic Incentive Committee. But we now have some governing bodies that are just anything that has any tax incentives they back off of. Now, Dave and I can tell you the incentives that we've done have returned 40 to 1. So there's really no reason not to support them, but it's a political environment. And so part of that is we'd almost have to, as a tax incentive, look at that TIF area to make sure we get that passed before we decided, right, David, before you do the convention center, because if they're depending that on finances and it didn't go through, that would be a failure for their financial plan, as far as as I understand it, right, Dave? Or is that fair to say? Yeah.
Go ahead, Emma.
It's not it's not a case scenario where we could make the decision and then the TIF passes afterwards, because I would say that's almost conditional to, if their proposal is selected, then that's work that comes afterwards, versus if you approve the TIF district and then their project doesn't get selected and then somebody else takes advantage of the TIF district, if that's appropriate. I would maybe wonder if it's something that could be done in phase 3, or is that not allowed?
It's probably an Eric question. I don't, it's a chicken and the egg, I think, yeah.
Yep.
Eric's listening.
Yes. I mean, I think it is, if the project is going to require some use of TIF funding, and then I assume, again, before you all everyone jumps off the cliff together, they'll need to know whether that funding is there or not. I think it is important to say that, not that you wouldn't include the county and the school district, because we understand that 3% cap is causing problems, not that you wouldn't include them in the conversation, but I think it is quite possible that their attitude may differ if the project is to incent a particular private development. But I think what both of the projects that are among the four, the downtown and the Bruhala, are both talking about using some TIF proceeds for a public project, not necessarily a private incentive. And so I think it can be treated both legally in terms of their ability to protest, but also politically a different animal.
Okay, I have one question and then a simple caveman comment on this. So my question is, I know you try to get all the taxing entities involved in a TIF, but do you have to have them? Can the city do its own TIF without? I mean, it would be worth less money, right? Or do you have to have all through? That's one question.
Of your property tax, the city's is only 20%, so typically it doesn't make or break a project if they need all partners to participate to make a TIF worth it for most developments.
Well, what if you could get the county and the city? Would that be useful? Eric?
Yes, yeah.
It just wouldn't be as much, but it would be still viable.
Correct.
Okay, okay. And then my other question, my comment is, none of this can be decided until we pick a project, right? Right? I mean, we can't negotiate these things with each of them separately and then say, okay, now we're going to pick one. So all the more reason we need to move forward, and with whatever information we get from both HVS and Baker Tilly, come back and make a reasonable decision and pass it on to the city commission, and hopefully get this moving this summer. Because, as it was pointed out in one of our presentations, the longer we wait, the more it costs. Nothing is getting cheaper, nothing will ever get cheaper, although interest rates probably have come down some for now. That's one thing we want to jump on. But the cost of construction, doesn't go down. I'd be shocked if the cost of construction ever went down. So we should move ahead, get the info, and then make our decision, right? Commissioner?
So the important thing is for us to rate them from 1 to 4, I think, because of whatever we recommend will go on to the city commission. So let's say the number one, you start negotiating with them, and it turns out it's just not viable. Then you have to say, okay, we're going to move on to number 2.
Yeah.
So, and that could very easily happen just because there's so many things that are unknown until we start actually negotiating. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh no, I get it 100%. We're going to get what we can get the information we can get from our experts, and then we'll make the best decision we can. But yes, we'll rank them, because we all know that could happen. Some things change, Some things change, just goes that way. Shirley? Oh. Oops. Oh, yes?
Something I'm partially interested in is hearing. Partially interested in polling the crowd, is hearing each person's individual feedback. I know we had presenters present. I don't know if it would be appropriate ever to have each individual on the commission be like, this is my digestion of the information we've heard thus far, because each person has their own perspective. Like, I would love to hear Kent's on the AV side of it.
Are you willing to start it?
I mean, I would do it. I'm nervous to share, if I'm being honest, but I think it's just with the limited time we have in discussions, it seems like the most concise format for allowing each person to share what they've learned up until this point and what stuck with them. Because I want to have other perspectives in mind. The secondary question I had was, can you remind me how we collected the public feedback again? Was it like a form that people submitted, or?
There was the website where they could see, the city website where they could see each of the proposals. There was a box where they could load comments on each specific proposal. So the
Okay.
comments you got were organized by
Proposal.
project. Yes, by
Okay.
proposal.
Okay,
They were all over the map inside that, but
Yeah.
they were organized by proposal.
okay, that's helpful,
Yeah.
I was just wondering for
Yeah.
level setting and reading all 66 pages.
Yeah, well, I know what you're talking about, Emma, because I did a radio interview before I came in here, and the host asked me to give him 1 plus and 1 minus of every project. And I'm like, well, this is dangerous. But I figured it out. I mean, we all can do plus. I said I can do multiple pluses and minuses of each project. And so that's kind of where I approach it. The question is, what are the priorities in your head about things? Is visitor experience the most important thing for you? You've heard Shirley and I talk about that a lot. Is the bottom line absolutely 100%? The only thing that matters, and no matter how we vet it out, whichever one looks best, that's the one it should be. Is management more important to us? Is traffic access more important? These are all things that go yay and nay, as a negative or a positive, depending on which one you look at. And so it's pretty easy to go down them and do the pros and cons. I've been doing that. I've been doing it for 13 years. So, I can, yes.
Yeah, Joe Raso here. I think that would be, Emma's suggestion would be great. If we want to take time doing that, there is one question or comment I have to the group, and I think Tom brought this up. It was I think he said the emphasis on the use of the facility. And I think we had a couple of the proposals that emphasized, the ability to support sports, maybe more than the other two, and I may be wrong on that. But I'm just curious how much emphasis we're putting on the convention center for those types of uses versus the other thing I hear is, the trade show, the conference, that doesn't seem to be as sports related. So I don't know if anybody can comment on that, or maybe from the, Shirley from the CVB's perspective.
Shirley beat me to the button on that one.
So from our perspective, first and foremost, we need room to do the traditional meetings and conventions. That's what we need the contiguous space to do, first and foremost. Secondly, would be great if we could use it for, I'm going to say competition and not sport, right? You can, we are talking to people about a jump rope competition, right? You can do that in any blank space as long as the floor is right. So competition, a chess competition, whatever it might be, that would be secondary use, because why would you just limit it to one thing and keep it empty, right? Third use then would be obviously those local events, your event, Joe, our event, chamber events, whoever, corporate events, et cetera, that would use this, that would fill this facility. So first and foremost, we need the space for meetings, traditional meetings and conventions. Sport, to me, is just another way that we already have. Thank you, Mayor, for looking at our numbers. I truly appreciate that. Sport tourism is one of the biggest drivers we have in this community. And we're going to continue to drive that. That is just another venue for us to use when maybe it's a softer convention time. So we will search far and wide to put something into this facility. I like that, that they showed that they understand the sports stuff, but first and foremost, we need to be able to host the North Dakota League of Cities, right? Just to keep it simple. That's first and foremost. But again, multi-use, I think, is the key to this, but knowing the first and foremost. Does that help, Joe?
Yeah, I would add to that remember what we're missing.
Yeah.
What we're missing is convention space. That is the number one thing. Yes, if we can fill, we don't want it to sit empty, so if it's sitting empty some weekend and it could have cheer and dance competition, and it should be set up so it can do that. But that's not that's not what it's being built for. That's a secondary ancillary use for it. We don't have convention space. That's what we need. We pivoted to sports back in 2014, when all the hoteliers came to me. Claire, I don't know if you were even, she left, okay. So all the hoteliers came and said, look, they're all building all these, you remember there's a hotel boom, right? Especially out around the new hospital. And some of the hoteliers, even on our board, said, well, what are you going to do to fill all these new hotels? And I said, well, we're going to pivot to sports because no one's building any meeting space. So that's what we did. We expanded the sports department, and it worked, and it's still working, but we're still missing that other piece. So that's what this is for, primarily.
Charlie,
Okay.
the other thing, I think, we have public comment, or there are 600, 800, how many comments did we get? Do you know the number?
We had 66 pages. 66 pages. I didn't count the individual comments.
Okay, so, just so the public knows, we had 66 pages. My curiosity of the committee is there any surprises there? Because everyone, as far as I read, just like Charlie said, there were pluses and minuses. They either loved the space or they hated the space. They either didn't like the traffic, didn't like the input, didn't like different things, right? Were there, for as a committee, were there any surprises? Any of you said that, hey, we ought to make the public aware of this. This is the biggest turn down on one of the 4 proposals. But just so the public knows, they very much engaged. We got a lot of input. John Strand will always ask, did you get input? I think we got input.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I almost thought, and maybe you guys disagree, but it was almost 50-50, that some people really liked the spot or didn't like the spot. The ones that didn't like it gave great reasons not to do it at that spot, but it went back and forth. And, Mark had a great passion when he did the Bruhala. You almost were mesmerized by how he was telling his story. But I thought the public comments were fairly, from whatever objective face they were at, were objective to what they didn't like or what they did like about the space. I don't think, Charlie, they really took into any of the economic factors. I think they took more into either they liked that area or liked that space or liked the proposal, right? It seemed like they focused on, Charlie, your convention center in some ways, right? That they liked or didn't like. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But just in fairness to them, I don't think the committee learned anything different than the things we're weighing, right? Or what we like about the space, the cost, the different things that they're having, and that the public did get, we're weighing in their comments, But like Charlie said, it was 66 pages, and, you know, it took a long evening and to read all those. Charlie probably read them before 9 o'clock, but, I mean, most of us, right? when
I
we
read them before midnight.
Oh, okay, good.
Mayor, if I could add, I think one of the things that flagged for me is still a misunderstanding that this is not a sales tax, it's a lodging tax, and that our residents
I would
will not
concur
be
with that, too.
taxed. And so we are thinking about how we help educate, right, our residents. I saw also in there, we don't need this, educating our residents on why we do. If we want to maintain economic impact and growth in our region, even compared to, again, Grand Forks and Bismarck and St. Cloud and others, which this community deserves that, and that's who we are. And imagine 5 years from now when all this is said and done, and we have a successful convention center, what that does for this community. So I think that's one of the things that again, people don't understand all the context always, which is fine, that's normal. They haven't been here since 2013, like Charlie doing this. People don't understand the finances of it all, or maybe didn't read that, so they don't understand the nuances, they make assumptions. So I think that's normal, probably in any you guys as commissioners know this more than anybody. But I think for us as Visit Fargo Moorhead, we want to make sure that everybody understands this is lodging tax, and my team goes to work every day to drive lodging tax and to drive occupancy. So that's why we exist. And that is what's going to help make this successful. So I think that for us is just sort of an information thing that we need to do as Visit Fargo Moorhead to make sure that everybody understands that.
Well, and you also have to take into account that people, everyone has a different view of this, and I saw so many comments about traffic and congestion and that kind of thing, and which brings me back to what our friends from the traffic department told us one day. This facility isn't going to be every week like a Pink concert at the Fargo Dome. It's just not going to be 17,000 people coming here. If we get events with 800 to 1,200 people, that'll be great. But that's not the same kind of traffic that you see around the Dome for a big event, and it will be much more easily managed. So frankly, I don't think any of the four proposals has a problem traffic or access-wise. I don't see that as a big pro or con for any of them.
So Charlie, our engineering department did an objective review, and all four of them were good. They said that, and so you have to go by and that's what their profession is, and so they gave them all four of them. So that's
Yeah, and they took into account, the average size of events that we'd be after from small to large, and they said the impact would be essentially, in my recollection, minimal on traffic and for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Shirley, I know you said, I don't recall what the term was, but when you have an event and you have that spread and having other hotels.
Compression.
Compression.
Yeah.
What concerns me about one of the options, and I think they're all have fabulous pluses, is that across the street, those hotels are West Fargo hotels, and there is not a lodging tax, and that is not going to fund any part of the convention center. So if we do have that spread in a certain location, it's not going to fund the convention center like other locations will, and that's a big concern of mine.
Shirley, you want that one?
I mean, it's going to add compression to the entire community. So I understand that for sure. The lodging tax, no matter where it comes from, goes to our marketing budget. That will fuel selling the region, the community that we have. I get it. I think this was a decision. I asked him when I first came in, why did we not do both cities or whatever? You know what I mean? So that's where we're at. Charlie, you can add. You've been here since the beginning.
I left that part out.
Well, and I think there's confusion out there too. Yes, all cities, West Fargo, Fargo, Moorhead, all contribute to Visit Fargo Moorhead at 3% of their lodging taxes, but Fargo is the only
Not
one
to
that's
this.
paying for the convention center.
correct.
So
That's
to
correct.
me,
Agreed.
Fargo residents, Fargo should be the best benefactor.
Yeah, the only other possible answer that Shirley kind of touched on here, and I totally understand this, people have been asking this a lot, is that no matter where it is going to create that compression. So ultimately, it's going to benefit hotels in Fargo, West Fargo, and Moorhead. Would it default to the West Fargo ones more if it was near that border? I can't argue that it wouldn't, because they'd be nearer the convention center, so that compression would start there. But wherever it is, it will ultimately end up feeding some of them something, but that's the way it is. So that it's certainly a factor for people to consider.
I think it's also been pointed out that that particular location is home to a whole lot of hotels, ours included. I mean, it's not too far to go this direction to go over the bridge, or this way to go down the other way to 45th. So the compression, like you guys said, is amazing, and we're excited for it wherever the project lands. But that area in particular, you got a lot of hotels, both sides.
That's true. They're both sides of Veterans Boulevard. I mean, yeah, I drive down Veterans Boulevard. I don't know what city I'm in. It changes from block to block.
Oh, I know. And I don't know if perhaps there's some sort of incentive to have conventions goers first fill Fargo hotels, because that's what's paying for the project. West Fargo hotels are not paying for it.
Shirley?
Yeah, that is interesting. So what happens when you get a bid from a meeting planner? They say, I need peak night, I need 400 hotel rooms, right? Let's make a number up. And so then we send out a bid to the hotels. We might have a hotel that's like unbooked already, a Fargo hotel that's booked already, right? Typically, we send it out to all the hotels in the community. Or there might be a West Fargo hotel across the street that they want because it's across the street because it's in this certain one location. So those are nuances I think we have to figure out. I'm looking at a hotelier here.
Your nuances also go, and this is me speaking as an independent flag. I have got people who, they love the clubhouse. Yay, we love that they love the clubhouse. I'm not a Marriott. I'm not a Hilton. And there's a whole lot of rewards that go into all of the things, IHG, Best Western. So when you have those meeting planners, that's a big, big deal too. Also, we have 100 rooms, and that's about, correct me if I'm wrong, the average size hotel in the area. I would say probably a little less than that, but you don't have more that tick over 120. So again, it's great for the compression piece to be able to get a lot more pieces of the pie to lots of places.
Bottom line is, everyone's going to have to bake that into their own review of this. It's certainly not an invalid point to consider. Yes?
Go here.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, I apologize if we've done this, and I've just forgotten. Have we locked in the large criteria by which we're going to be, if not waiting, thinking about this? For example, how much emphasis are we going to put on, can it pay for itself? I assume that's going to be a huge weight. If it can't be done potentially, or visitor experience or expandability, things like that. I'm just curious if you have something developed and I've just forgotten about it.
There is Phase 2 scoring criteria. Did I send that out to you guys separately a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago? Anyway, it's at the end of the second round RFP, but I also separated it out as its own document, so I will send it to you again. Which brings me to another point that a couple of people on the committee have brought up to me, and I want to get Eric's take on this. Eric, we talked about this, you and Shirley and I talked about this the other day a little bit. When we get around to the scoring, there were some questions raised about could the committee do it anonymously, get the average without revealing individual scoring? I bring that up because I was asked about it. So Eric, I don't know if you've had enough time to decide if that's something that's even legal for a body like this. Are you still there?
I haven't. Yep, no, I'm still here, Charlie. I haven't really had a chance to think hard about that possibility, just so people know what we're talking about. As Charlie just said, is there a way to have some kind of selection process that where voting is kind of anonymous, and that's generally contrary to open meeting law requirements, where a motion is made, then there's requirement for a call of the roll. So obviously that's quite specific. The question that occurred to me is, well, is it possible, it doesn't necessarily have to be a motion that's happening. You're just identifying a ranking. Is it possible you have some kind of Australian ballot? You know, you write your ranking on a slip of paper. You don't sign who it is, and the paper is discoverable, but you haven't identified who it is. Is that possible? I don't know that, but that's the question. Is there a way of doing it that allows for some kind of anonymous input in that way? Again, we want to comply with the law and the spirit of the law, but at the same time, there sometimes can be value in getting honest rankings.
It would be great if you could look into that for us, because, and it's not, it won't be a motion. The motion that'll come out of this will come after the ranking, and we'll decide what to recommend. We may massage the ranking. I feel the committee would still have that right in a discussion after the ranking goes in. I think you made a good point, though. If we were going to do it anonymously, we'd have to do it by paper, because if it got loaded online, it would be public record. So just look into that. And we're not trying to make this less transparent. That's not the goal. It's just that some committee members have been concerned about it. So if you could tell us more about that, that'd be great, and then we can make an informed decision as to whether we can even consider it.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is, do you want to meet again next Friday? Or do we want to wait until we get the materials back from Baker Tilly and HVS? Commissioner, you look like you have Commissioner Dave?
Can I ask, can you give us like a timeline? So when is that report going to be done? And to me, we don't need to meet until that is done. That's just my opinion.
Well, it looks like April 17th. I need to find a calendar.
It's a Friday.
I have one on my phone.
It's a Friday.
It's a Friday, the 17th of April. So then I would suggest that we get on it, because I would really like to still have this done by the end of April. I'd like to have a recommendation. We're already a month later than I wanted, but that's okay. We need to do this. Forgive me for saying this out loud in a public meeting, but I really don't want this to become some sort of election issue. And I think by the end of April, we can still kind of hold on to that, right? I think you all know what I'm talking about. We don't want it to be, we want the commission to make a decision. So hopefully, if we get it on April 17th, we'd probably want a few days to review it. I assume you would be able to send it out to all of us. So maybe if we wanted to meet the following, I don't know if we need to wait till Friday, but the following week, we could pick a day to meet. So I don't have to pick it right now, but the week of the 20th, expect 1 or 2 meetings. How's that? Maybe, probably 2,
Yeah. And
for sure.
Sorry, Charlie.
Pardon me?
Yeah, agree. And then if we could be collecting the questions with that
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
Yes. Shirley is going to create a shared document, which she will give me a link to, and I will send to all of you. All right? Okay.
Charlie, do we have a meeting date goal to present to the city commission? Is that set?
Well, I'll have to look at the commission calendar and then decide. So we'll see. Hopefully, it would be the closest meeting to around the end of April.
There's the 27th,
And that-
Is
so-
the meeting.
Yeah, and then the next one would be May what?
May 11th.
Okay. Let's shoot for the 27th.
Okay.
The agenda is noon on the 23rd, so.
Say it again?
The commission agenda is noon on the 23rd.
It's
then.
due, the agenda item would be
okay.
due the 23rd.
Well, we could have the recommendation of the commission by the end of April, but they might not get to act on it till May 11th, I guess. We'll see. But we'll try, we'll see what we can do. Depends, we might be able to move quickly if we meet a couple times that week. Then we might want to meet like on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 21st and 22nd. Because then we'd know by the 23rd, we have to know by the 23rd to get it on the agenda.
By noon.
Okay, I have another question. If we put it on the agenda and for some reason, it's easier to take something off the agenda than put it on, right?
We just continue it.
You would, yeah, exactly, so. But it's harder to add something later, so.
Yes, hard to add, easy to pull.
Let's plan on putting it on the 27th for now. Okay, so shared document. What was the other thing? I was going to write something else down and then I got distracted.
I'm going to address, Emma had to leave, but are we going, her suggestion was that everybody sort of give feedback?
Yes, that was it, yes.
I guess, do we wait till the Baker Tilly stuff comes in before we do that? Or do we take a meeting to do that before the, I don't know. I just didn't want to forget that part since Emma
We,
asked about
we
it.
could have a discussion meeting before that stuff comes back, but I understand that it might feel that things could change, that there might be things that come out in that info that would affect everyone's view, so
And I'll work with Tom to find out when he can give us his feedback as well.
no later than the 17th, right, Tom? Yeah, sooner if possible would be great.
Well, yeah, we could study this to death and study it for 6 months, but I know we can't do that. So let's regroup on a scope and a specific scope of what we'll do and
Yeah.
something that we can get to by April 17th.
Yeah, we can talk to you about that. Okay. All right, so plan on possibly the 21st and 22nd for meetings. I'd like to give you the 20th to look at the stuff, because if we don't get it till Friday, people don't necessarily want to do that over the weekend, so. Also, I'm leaving for England on April 30th, so. I'll